program. This is Saad here in the studio in London, and very soon I should have Gregory joining me.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Gregory. Welcome to the show. How are you doing, and how's the weather where you are? Oh,
It's a bit cloudy and
okay.
cool. We are in Brussels.
In Brussels. Okay. As usual, I'm here in London. It's a bit overcast now, but it's been bright and warm, cooler than last week and the weeks before. The autumn is now here. We've entered September, so I think it's getting, but not like cold, just cooler. So welcome to the show, dear listeners. This is Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And we have a topic every week, a new topic every week. The topic for tonight is first impressions. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. And I think we're going to have our regular colleague joining us now. So let me put him on there. Good evening. Is that Mena? Let me just make sure he's online. 1 second. Hello, Mena. Are you there?
Yeah,
Oh,
Victor,
welcome to the show. We just started. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
All right. Okay, we
Yeah,
just started. The topic for tonight is first impressions.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to begin with, dear listeners, to tell you what is the Grail message. The Grail message, in the light of truth, by Abdrushin, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I would like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdrushin. The reader and hearer of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic we're discussing tonight is first impressions. And you're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number. If you're in UK, this is the number, which is 079 444 31366. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, I've been looking in the dictionary for, the topic tonight is first impressions. But first, I think we should look at the word impressions. So in the dictionary, one second. I just try to find it again. Yes. So impressions, which is an idea, feeling, or opinion about something or someone, especially one formed without conscious thought or on the basis of little evidence. And they've given an example here in a sentence. His first impressions of Manchester were very positive. And another meaning of impression, which I don't think we will be looking at tonight, it's here, an imitation of a person or thing done to entertain. Because we're looking at a spiritual understanding, so we won't be going into that, I don't think, too much. And then I've also got some synonyms for the word impression, and that says feeling, sense, fancy, suspicion or sneaking suspicion, inkling, intuition, hunch, and apprehension. These are the synonyms for the word impression. I'm just going to repeat the definition again in the dictionary here. It says an idea, feeling, or opinion about something or someone, especially one formed without conscious thought or on the basis of little evidence. Gregory, would you say when we use the word impression, is that a good definition there? What it says here, what I've just read here? And is that like what we're going to be discussing tonight?
Well, thanks for that particular question. One should be conscious of what the dictionary does. The dictionary, or whatever they care to call it, only describes. That means it skirts around what it is, but it is not precise enough. Along the line, because it's offering a description, which description has its basis in conscious evidence. It strives to be as precise as possible. So, to some extent, one may take that as a beginning. But if one intends to discuss the word or expression, impression, one has to do it in an all-embracing manner, not just the descriptions that have been given in the dictionary or on the internet. Strictly speaking, because this is a program which is based on spiritual discussions or understanding, for a change, one will not start from so-called dictionary description, because it's necessary to be precise enough. It is very clear to many, or to be more precise to some, that the inner core of man, that which activates the physical body, which we all use for our interaction, that inner core is of spirit.
I thought.
Mena, let Gregory carry on and then you can come in, okay? Sorry about that, Gregory. Please continue.
The inner core of man is of spirit. And that which is of spirit has its origin. From what we now know, that which is of spirit that started as a spirit germ has its origin in paradise. And in order to mature, it needed to leave that realm. For there it was unconscious and it needed to grow. And as it journeyed down from the paradise of man, it went deeper into what one will refer to as the animistic realm. On its way, it became conscious, but not self-conscious. As it journeyed further, it had the first impression. That first impression was the format it wished to take, whether it's going to be on the active side or on the passive side. That first impression is decisive for the human spirit. If along the line his decision is to be on the active side, it took on the form of a male. If that first impression is on the passive side, it took on the form of a female. That means its activities are already defined from that first impression, for it is decisive. That may explain many things as we go along. There has always been one first impression, and that impression is from the spirit. That impression that sends a wave of power, which wave of power is able to receive an echo from that which it intends to interact with or perceive, and makes a decision. Subsequently, whilst here on earth, the inner core is still of spirit, but it also has the intellect. The intellect is basically for temporary things, not for permanent. The strong impressions which the spirit sends, that means the waves of power, transcends the earthly conceptions of space and time.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for giving quite a sort of background to this word impression, or and even human beings, how we have an impression. So, Mena, did you want to come in now?
Yes, I do. Yeah, good evening, Sad and Brother Gregory. Yeah, I do have a different meaning of the word impression, and I think um, if it would be okay to, go by what this um, interpretation means.
Yes.
So the meaning I have here is an effect feeling, or an image retained as a consequence of experience. So an impression is an effect, feeling, or image retained as a consequence of experience.
Okay.
I do understand, the journey man takes to becoming, self-conscious, which, may involve taking a decision, as to which way to go. But impression is just an effect, feeling, or image retained as a consequence of experience. I don't
Good.
know if Gregory would like to expand on that. It also says that a vague notion, remembrance, or belief. That's what an impression means.
Can you repeat the second one? I didn't hear that very well.
Yeah, it's a vague notion. It's a vague
A
notion.
vague notion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
remembrance or
Remembrance
belief.
or
Yeah.
belief. Okay. Gregory, would you like to address what Mena has just said there? Because he has a, well, I would say the definition is different words, maybe not. Um, yeah, let's just, yeah, if you can have a look at those words, Gregory, and if you can respond to that.
Actually, if he were to reflect on what one has discussed, it has covered completely what he just mentioned. Because one is not describing, but defining in the finest precision what impression is, not a description, and which is intellectual. It is vague because once the intellect is involved, the intellect can only provide from that which it has stored, which is one may refer to as intellectual experience. Anything above that is oblivious to the intellect, or to be more succinctly, it is vague to the intellect. It's unable to differentiate that which supersedes it because it's unable to grasp. The intellect needs all the collection. Only what it has stored does it understand. Anything which is above it, it can never grasp. Therefore, if one is to base one's definition on the intellect, it will be vague, just as he has mentioned. However, I will read out some passage from the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message, such that many a listener will have a more precise picture which is discussed. This is taken from the message, and the title is Intuitive Perception. Actually, the word impression may be substituted for intuitive perception. Every intuitive perception that a person has immediately forms a picture. In the formation of this picture, the small brain or cerebellum participates as the bridge across which the soul should control the body. It is that part of the brain through which you receive your dreams. It is in turn connected with the frontal brain or cerebellum, through the activity of which thoughts are generated that are more closely tied to space and time, and which eventually constitute the intellect. Now pay close attention to the process. You will then be able clearly to distinguish when the intuition speaks to you through the spirit, or when feeling addresses you through the intellect. The activity of the human spirit awakens intuitive perception within the solar plexus, thereby simultaneously making an impression upon the cerebellum. It is the effects of the spirit, that is, a wave of power issuing from the spirit. Man naturally perceives this wave in that spot where the spirit within the soul is connected with the body, in the center of the so-called solar plexus, which passes on the wave to the cerebellum, where it creates an impression. I will stop there and say precisely that defines what an impression is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gregory, for that answer, reading, and your answer. Um, I would say there's so much there that we need to go into. Um, um, Maybe if I can start, say, let's talk about impressions a little bit more. In the sense, we have a spiritual impression, and then we have an earthly impression, because and if we look at it like, say, earthly in the sense of the physical, where we have our eyes, we have the sight, the sense of smell and feeling with the hands and so on, let's say, and then you've said, so things that you see in a physical way, and also you talked about the intellectual, sort of impression, and then there's you could call it the first impression, which is the spiritual impression, and which is obviously, as you've described, how the spirit works within the body, and how, through the solar plexus, it sends out, sends out a wave of power, like you said, and then that's what you sense in the gut. We call it gut feeling. I think that's what a lot of people refer to it as gut feeling. So what I'm getting here, Gregory, is that we really need to sort of give let's say, more understanding for people to realize how big this topic really actually is. Because, like you said, the English dictionary or the dictionary definition or description is let's say, only touching, giving a little picture of the actual reality there. So, yeah. Now,
Yeah.
go on, Mena, did you want to say
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, it would be nice to clarify what a first impression is.
You want to clarify what is first impression? Yes.
No. I mean, could Gregory do that, please?
Of course.
Yeah.
Gregory, please, could you clarify more on what is the first impression, and then,
Again, if one had been listening carefully, that has been precisely mentioned. That first impression is the impression from the inner core, which is of spirit. All others are secondary. And that is why that impression from the spiritual standpoint is always and has always been the first impression. A simple example that one may discuss, even in the communications that we're having right now, there you are in London, here I am in Brussels. The wave transmissions make impressions, but these impressions are secondary impressions. The first impression is from the origin. In the case of the human spirit, in the case of any discussion, if one is open, that wave always come from the spirit. And that is why we have first impression. And therefore, one described the others as subsequent impressions.
Now, you can say the next question from that would be, is the first impression reliable and accurate, and the other subsequent impressions, are they, it looks like, because there are, as Mena mentioned, it could be they're vague, maybe they're not so accurate and reliable. So would you say that that is correct understanding?
The first impression transcends the local or the earthly conceptions as we know it of space and time. The other impressions that he himself mentioned is based on what has been collected locally. And because the intellect is not precise enough, it is vague. It is not very reliable. Why is it not reliable? Because the intellect wants to justify, always ask for justification. Take a very simple example. Here you are, you go to sleep. And in your sleep, you dream you are in a different region. And here you haven't been to that region before. So you are surprised. Intellectually, you will dismiss it. Oh, this is not possible. Only to find out much later, a week or two, or maybe a month later, you are in that particular region. Then the question will be, how did that happen? The intellect can only tell you that which it has collated. Therefore, it is necessary for each personality to learn to observe very carefully, not to be too quick in making judgments, but to reflect, as has been described here or has been defined here in the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail message. The efforts being made in this discussion is to direct many a listener to this work so that they can examine for themselves and never take what we have discussed for so-called the gospel truth. For only through personal examination can one come to better or finer conclusion. That which is a token or which seems vague, once it is examined objectively through one's perception, through one's intuition, through one's first impression, then one refines that which one is doing and will come to a better judgment.
Thank you so much, Gregory.
Question.
Before you go,
Question, please.
okay, Victor, just hold. Okay, just hold on 1 second. I just want to say something for the listeners, and then you can come in. No. So, dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdul Sheen. And if you want to get a copy of the Grail message or want to get more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com, which is, I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic tonight, listeners, we're discussing is first impressions. You can join in the discussion with any question or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp And if you're outside of UK, it is 004479 444 31366. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Go ahead, Mena.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Gregory, for your explanation. I have this question. If you want to say that the first impressions are probably right, it therefore means that anybody who picks up the grail message, at first hand would, consider it to be the truth. Why is it that, it's not always the case? You get the
First,
question?
it's a wrong conclusion to say that if first impression is always right, how come that those who pick up the message may think otherwise? Well, it is very clear. For those who pick up the message, something must have directed them to picking up the message. They must have been guided for one reason or the other in picking up the message. So that was a first impression. For those you mentioned as seekers, for a seeker, there is the need to be neutral or objective. For the spirit is just waking up. However, one must distinguish between the intellectual volition and the spiritual volition. Because of the activities we are all engaged in, the intellectual volitions have so much taken over that it becomes very difficult, if not tedious, to distinguish which the first impression is. Here, we are talking of an examination which is to be made of the spirit, not of the intellect. Therefore, if you have someone who comes in to examine with the intellect alone, then that person will be disappointed. For that which is of the spirit is all embracing, whereas that which is of the intellect is only considering a very narrow aspect. And as you know, man or many a person wish to start from a very narrow angle, or through their activities, they always consider what suits them as if it is a novel. Once it comes to the fact that they themselves must examine with their spirit, many just weaken and they let it go. That is the reason why many who may come across the work in the light of truth push it away, for it demands much more, much more than intellectual sophistry and intellectual examination. It calls for the spirit to be awake, to recognize what that which is of spirit is.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for that. Mena, did you want to respond?
No, I think that's okay. Yeah.
Good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see now. I think in that answer, Gregory, you answered a lot of things actually. People becoming disappointed and so on. But I've got a question here. Let me put this one. Many people have been bitterly disappointed in believing in first impressions, such as love at first sight, whereby things turn out awry. How can such matters be explained correctly?
Thanks. You said love at first sight. Well, it is very clear when it is said love at first sight. There is love at first sight, and there's also expectations. The expectations that one is looking at are very different. Many times, anything that challenges the spirit, many put aside. Yet, that which they love, be it a woman or a park, whatever one calls it, that requires that it be examined objectively. It is indolence to see that which looks beautiful and do not examine further. The disappointment is always on the part of that person who is disappointed, for he or she hasn't examined enough or is expecting that without any effort, rewards will be reaped. Take a simple example. It's a simple example. Many like diamonds, but you know the effort that one needs to put in to get diamond. Many love gold. They love gold at first sight. But you can now imagine the efforts that is required to get pure gold. So, whatever is beautiful, whatever is noble, whatever is worth having, that personality must put in the required effort. That effort being the purification of oneself, not just accepting all that which has been thrown at it. Once the individual has purified itself, in which the intellect now understands that it comes second, whereas the spirit comes first, the spirit sending out the first impression and the intellect taking over in further examination, then things will be in a better shape. So the love at first sight is only a beginning, but things must be examined, just as you have the case of diamond or the case of gold. Who will love oil, which is black and dirty at first sight, but only when that oil has been purified to petrol or to kerosene or to fuel, which is useful for many, then one can now speak of a love at first sight. In that case, many do not reject the looks of it, for many only rely on looks without putting in the necessary efforts of self-purification.
Thank you, Gregory, for that answer. I want to explore more. We talked the first impression there, of love at first sight as being a first impression, and then you said you still have to be objective and continue to explore more. So I want to ask you, where is the first impression? I mean, a true first impression. Is that something objective, rational, or is it because when we're looking, I know we're not supposed to look at the dictionary definition and rely on the dictionary definition. So my question is the first impression something that is conscious sensing, or is it an unconscious sensing? And then And then is that also this first impression? Is it also objective and rational?
The first impression many a time is unconscious sensing. It is objective, but the speed of judgment of the intellect is almost as fast, depending on the personality, as that of one's intuition. And because of that, you have two things appearing at the same time. Therefore, it looks vague. Therein lies the vagueness. That is why there is the need for examination, further examination. It's in further examination that, you come, that means you keep refining. That refinement is an intellectual refinement to a large extent. So it is the intellect that needs to be refined. And in that process, you can now find reasons why things are the way they are and in them moving forward.
And there's another thing I remember we mentioned. It's like evidence, or you even said justification, maybe. So we said the first impression is a spiritual impression, and you've just said here it's a it can be subconscious or unconscious rather, a sensing, or it can even be conscious sensing. So does that involve any evidence? Do we find some evidence? Does the spirit have some sensing of some evidence it picks up when it gets a first impression, or is that there is no evidence? It's just simply a sensing.
The spirit is the one that sends out the wave of power. It sends out the wave of power for a spirit that is alive. The wave of power in accordance with the laws of creation. That of the intellect that to some extent distorts the whole thing, perceives in accordance with the local laws, which may not be in accordance with the natural laws. Consider many a time when judgment is to be passed, you do not have to do anything wrong before you are found guilty. For not doing anything wrong, many people are found guilty of an offense which they themselves did not commit. The individual knows that he or she never participates in an event which others are accusing him or her of. Therefore, it knows deep down it did not participate. Yet, the others who are passing the judgment on that personality believe they do not have evidence. But because they want to find him guilty, they, in their arbitrary rules, just pass judgment on him. That happened in the case of Christ. That is undeniable. But in accordance with the rules of creation or with the laws of creation, the spirit that is active can send out a wave of power which is more precise, which is impartial. Whether it's been interpreted accordingly or not is a different discussion altogether.
Okay, question.
Yes, go ahead, Mena.
Yes, thank you, Gregory. Can you explain the natural laws in relation to first impressions? I mean, do they work, do they collaborate the first impression or they negate the first impression? How do the first impression work in regards to the natural laws?
One already mentioned that those false impressions have a basis on the natural laws or the laws of creation. And because they have the basis of the natural laws or laws of creation, they are precise as it should be.
Okay, thank you. So if somebody perhaps has, karma to redeem, he might have the impression he might receive from meeting a person will be different. It may not be. It will be biased. Don't you think so? Somebody who perhaps is meeting a smoker may have a different impression. You might be meeting. It might have a different impression to someone who doesn't smoke. I mean, these ones they have an influence on how the first impressions work out. Don't you think so?
The key thing is for each personality to purify themselves such that they are able to recognize or make use of the first impressions that assail them. Because that first impression is a wave of power that issues from the spirit. That of the intellect is different. What is wrong in meeting someone who is a smoker or those who have done something wrong in the past? And in entertaining these people or in interacting with them, there is a need to help those people to mature. Not all human spirits are the same levels of maturity. But in working together, the possibility is there to be able to assist others out of their predicament, even if they don't first realize it. There is nothing wrong with that. So it is a grace here on earth to be permitted to experience with others, even if there are different levels of maturity. Many a thing which may seem bad, but in interacting with others, they are able to purify themselves. They are able to observe things more calmly. And in the case of a smoker, in interacting with the others who are more refined, maybe along the line, they on their own will drop that habit. The same thing happens to those who have a predilection to steal or to lie or to commit arson. These are opportunities granted for many to improve themselves. So it is a grace. When Christ came, he came to help those out. When he gave examples of the Good Samaritan, when he said someone was moving from Jerusalem to Jericho and he fell among robbers and was beaten, he did not mention why that person was beaten. That was not what he wanted to show. When he gave that example to show whom your neighbor is, that person or personality whom you can empathize with, no matter the history. So in our everyday life, we should be more open and be prepared to send out good thoughts, no matter the situation.
Thank you, Gregory, for that.
Yeah.
Mena, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So if two persons like A and B meet Mr. C. Now, if Mr. A has a propensity to smoke, which he senses in C, and Mr. B does not have that propensity to smoke, which he sees in C. Mr. B, A would like C, while B would not like C. So, what is the influence on first impression? How do you explain first impression of this of A and B, Mr. A and B? Is it because
And
of the
the thing is that one must always bring the laws of creation into these matters, most particularly the law of the attraction of homogeneous species, which one may call, in the so-called scientific or everyday term, resonance. Two things will resonate if they have similar vibrations. Otherwise, there is no resonance. There will be no homogeneity. What brought two people together if there is no homogeneity? Even when you are in the bus, have you examined very carefully whether there is nothing that resonates between you and the person you're sitting very close to, wherever that may be? One, unless you try it, unless you ask yourself questions, not others, you may not know. So should three people come together, then there must have been something that is homogeneous that brought them together. It doesn't mean that they must all have the same qualities. They may have something which has brought them together. First, you should seek that which has brought them together before you find out the differences. What you are stressing here are the differences, not that which is homogeneous. But that which is homogeneous bring people together, bring species together, such that they can rub on one another and improve on themselves.
Thank you again, Gregory, for that. Gregory, I would like to sort of explore a few other things and to clarify our understanding of impressions. So we have thoughts, we have our wishes, and we've talked about these first impressions. So, and when, let's say, somebody's head is full of all these three things: wishes, thoughts, and impressions, how can we differentiate and distinguish that what is a thought, what is our wish, and what is an impression? Because in a way, you've already been talking how we can easily get confused about these things. So how can we distinguish what is an impression or first impression, thoughts, and wishes?
Thanks for this question. I had the opportunity to have read out a bit of from the lecture Intuitive Perception. And I will strive to read a bit slowly. Maybe you can pick out the keys here. Every intuitive perception that a person has immediately forms a picture. In the formation of this picture, the small brain or cerebellum participates as the bridge across which the soul should control the body. It is that part of the brain through which you receive your dreams. I will stop there and also mention a picture without words. When one examines, in the first case, one will advise many to get a copy of the message and try to examine this lecture, Intuitive Perception. When thoughts are mentioned, those thoughts are basically intellectual thoughts, something we've been thinking about. And in our thinking, we tend to want to justify, and we see all sort of confused scenario, and we're looking for evidence to make decisions and then move on. These are intellectual thoughts. What one is referring to here is the intuitive perception. This is very different, and that's why one had mentioned we have the formation of a picture without words. Many times when one is thinking, one thinks aloud in words. That means you attach words to all these things, and then you build up a picture. So that is the reverse from that of the intuitive perception, where the picture comes first. But each person must pay attention to this, and through his own practices and experience, will come to a conclusion.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Mena, did you want to continue, say something on that?
Yeah, I'm looking at a scenario where someone meets A meets B, and you know there's a lot that a human being comes with. That two people meet A and B. There's a lot of experiences, past experiences that come with each individual. Like the past experiences. It could be somebody who wants, who has, karma to redeem. If two people have karma to redeem within themselves, don't you think they'll be more attracted to each other than, that tenderness to repel each other? What do you think about that? Hi, Gravy.
Hello?
Yes, I'm saying that
You
if two people who have, a karma to redeem, like two people meeting each other, you might see that, it's not necessarily the impression. The first impression might be influenced by that which they have to redeem within themselves.
So, if I understand,
so?
if I understand you right, Mena, are you saying that, let's say, because even your first question, earlier question about A and B and C, it sounded like that. Let's say we have our prejudices, right?
Yes.
And those prejudices might interfere with our first impression about, because you're talking about karma here, where something is meant to happen to be redeemed. Two people are coming together to redeem something, but because of their prejudices, or one of the persons having particular prejudices, they may not redeem, because they will just decide, oh no, I don't want to be knowing this guy. I need to disappear. Keep away from him. So they will ignore their first impression because of their own because of their prejudice views. Yes, is that what you mean?
Yeah, it might be, it might tend to repel both each other, but it also could attract two people to each other.
Yeah, but what is your question? What's your question?
I'm saying, what if such forces take part in in first impressions?
Yes.
Can we say that the first impressions are clearly objective?
Yeah, but what I'm not clear about your question is, are we getting two conflicting first impressions? Are we getting one impression?
Yeah.
So you're saying two conflicting first impressions. One is that you're repelled, and the other one you're attracted.
You're attracted, yeah.
And they're both, and both. Well, it doesn't matter if one or both people feel that. So, okay, but then.
So what I'm saying is that I'm saying that sometimes impressions could be influenced by past experiences, karma, where you're coming from.
Right.
We don't know how two people have lived their lives in the past. That also plays a part in first impressions. So it's not correct.
Okay, so Gregory, did you follow that question, or should I?
I will give a rejoinder.
Yeah.
Consider two people, one who is very sensitive but not physically very strong, the other who is not so sensitive but physically very strong. Now, for them to achieve a particular goal, they need to work together. What sort of impressions do you think, or do you consider, these two might have if along the line that one who is physically very strong expects from the other that that particular person must be strong also? It doesn't work that way. There are some who are able to perceive the finer aspects and can point in the right direction. Then there are others who are not so sensitive, but are on the gross material side quite strong and can do the heavy work. But in cooperation, they are able to achieve a goal. That is how things are meant to be. To work together or to serve together, and not to be looking at faults and starting from faults. Some time ago, we discussed that which is so common nowadays, that which is of football. Whereas in a team, you have that people have different areas where they need to specialize. There are some who keep the goal. There are some who are the strikers. There are some who are the defenders. But the goal is what the team looks at. They wish to achieve a goal, so they work together. They serve together. Does it mean the impression of the striker is different from the impression of the man who keeps the goal? On the local level, they are different. But on the global level, in order to achieve a particular goal, they work together. That is how it's supposed to be. One cannot say, oh, because the man who keeps the goal has a false impression on how to keep goal, and the other person who is the striker has the impression on how to score goals, and therefore they shouldn't work together. What one should do is to look at the all impressive, or the combination of both in order to build up. No two people are alike, but each has something which he or she can share with the other. In that case, there is the need for cooperation. Else, with that not the case, maybe each person should have come as an island. So here on earth is the grace that permits many a person to live in the same neighborhoods, to be able to share, even if it doesn't agree with you 100%. There is some lessons to be learned. One should welcome these challenges because it helps to sharpen your wakefulness instead to stay on one side and find faults on the other side.
Thank you, Gregory. You've highlighted something I will say very important there, which is to look at the big picture. and not the local, you could call it the local picture, which is our own, how we see things on our own. And, you know, because of course, when we meet two people, you only know yourself, you don't know the other person. And as I was using the word prejudice, we do come with our views and our, maybe prejudice might be a strong word, but basically we have our way of seeing things. But we've got to put that aside because there's a global picture here. First of all, we don't know what the picture of the other person is in the first place. So, in a way, what you're saying, Gregory, is just welcome the opportunity when somebody approaches you, and just learn from whatever that opportunity brings. You know, whatever the experience is, grow from that, learn from that, and work with the person. So, as you know, you never know why you come across somebody. So I think that's a very good answer there. Mena, did you want to say something on that?
Yes, like a police officer, this stop and search policy. Now, if I stop and search a black person, one is carrying a knife, and the second person is also carrying something dangerous. What will be my impression of the third person?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it not true that my impression of the third person would be the same as would be influenced by what I have got from my experience of the two people that I've been before?
First thing you should know, no two people have exactly the same impression. No two. The impressions are governed by the inner liveliness of the inner core. So you cannot say, oh, based on this experience, based on that experience. All right, the experience which you yourself mentioned basically are based on intellectual experience. There are many. Take a very simple example. Paul. Let's not use the word Paul. Let's use the word Saul. Here was the case of Saul, who persecuted the Christians so vehemently that he was on his way to Damascus. The rest is history. When he then turned, many initially did not want to interact with him, for intellectually they have heard of Saul. But when he came forth, he came not as Saul, but as Paul. And thank goodness, through Paul, many things, he himself, who did not see Christ physically, but experienced him spiritually, pushed the boundaries. It is a lesson that many of us need to learn.
Thanks again, Gregory, for that. I think what you're highlighting again is we can't judge really, well, I was going to say by the cover of the book or the cover of, what the person looks like or what reputation the person has. It's only by their deeds, as you said it in the past, by their deeds or by their actions that we know the person. So yes, somebody may have done something in the past and been, let's say, a very terrible person, and then a few moments later, maybe some years later, they totally turn into someone else. So really, I think it just shows you can't judge. There's no, or you can judge, but you can judge get it easily wrong, and it's best to just live in that moment. That when you meet the person, that's what you do now, and then maybe 3 years later, that person is something else. So you act in that moment. You get the experience. Basically, everything is an opportunity. That's what I'm seeing. You just learn from each opportunity where you are right now, and then in 3 years later, you will not be the same person anyway. You have had some experience, or life is, led you somewhere else, and you'll be another opportunity there. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
But-
dear Men, just one moment, just before you guys say something. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the spiritual discussion program on Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And the topic we're discussing tonight is, I've forgotten it already, first impressions. That's the topic for tonight. And if you're in UK, you can call us or contact us on this number, which is 079 444 31366. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Melody, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah. I don't know if Gregory can explain why children, to one person, when they, a baby that is been a toddler, not a toddler, yeah, could be a kid or a toddler. If you attempt to carry a toddler, some kids would, are attracted to, X or Y persons, but to some persons they scream and shout. Why? What is the impression? What impression assail these children?
Well, it is very difficult to look at the background of these children, their past incarnations, what had colored the fabric of their weavings. And there are many who, even in this earth life, are still so attached to the experiences they have gathered. And depending on the maturity, they are able to respond to different scenarios. They themselves may see a personality or may be touched by a personality that in the past had contributed to their suffering. In all naturalness, these personality are now in their neighborhood and in sensing them do not want to have anything to do with these persons. But subsequently, what then happens is that these persons who in the past had contributed to their suffering are in a position to make amends through one good deed or the other. So this should not be thrown away, but should be considered. And what one has been stressing, or what is being stressed generally, is whether one be a child or not a child, the opportunities which the grace has afforded many a human spirit should be used to the full.
Mena, did you want to come back?
Yeah, no, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Can I ask a different one now? So, is it true? Is it correct to go by my first impression of any person I see? Like if I see like I see a beautiful lady, and I say, well, oh yeah, this is the love of my life, or could be the love of my life. Could I go with that impression and be correct, or do I have to, examine or take it easy and get to know the person and fully assess the person? What do you recommend on my first impression?
One cannot recommend anything other than that any personality should grow and be alive deep within. That would be the recommendation. That when one is able to know that one's intuition speaks, or the pictures that one's intuition furnishes, one is able to distinguish those pictures from one's personal wishes, which are very local, then one is alive. Then whatever then comes your way is a grace, whether you call it the love of your life or not. You might find someone along the way who, in according to human opinions, looks ugly externally, but deep within is a wonderful soul. But because you yourself have tied most of the things you wish to do to the outermost cover, that means you have voluntarily limited yourself to intellectual and have refused to improve, to see more than the cover. Then that which is gold is thrown away, and you now pursue that which is valueless. In anything man does, one has to ask, of what value? That which is of value requires further examination. Like we mentioned earlier, gold is gold. You have to value gold. But you can find some other metal that looks like gold. It's not gold. Unless you yourself has an instrument deep within you to examine, then many things will turn out to be wrong. So what is being advocated here, if one may refer to advocacy, is that man should be alive and use his intuition, that is his first impressions.
All right, thank you.
And Gregory, can we develop our intuition? Can we do something to practice to make the intuition sharper and you know and yes, I mean you mentioned at the beginning we talked about there's a spiritual impression and there's the earthly intellectual impression, and which is vague, but we still get a bit confused about these things. I know you gave us the process as it is in the grail message, how you know which is intuition and which is let's say intellectual, spiritual and intellectual, but how can we sort of be more effective, you could say, in using our intuition and getting the first impression, being sure that is our first impression and not something else? Can we develop it somehow?
As with everything, only through practice. And that practice is dependent on the individual. One is tempted to say, first, observe yourself. Observe how many times you have made errors in your quick judgment, and then calm down and reflect. To reflect, in this case, is to set into motion that which is not selfish, but that which is selfless. Because selfishness, if you start from selfishness, because you are tied to all the little things which is so much tied to your ego, these act as blinkers and color the first impression which assails you. These little things are the confusions. Many wish to ensure that The impressions they have are from the spirit. They wish to put their tap root, their main volition, in that of the spirit. But they do have so many feeder roots in their weaknesses. And this is what causes the confusion. If, however, in their personal examination, they put aside that which is selfish, that which is narrow, and get involved with a firm good volition, rooted in patience and perseverance, one may say they are on the right track. For others will come of themselves. But if many are searching for a formula which they may use, whilst at the same time having their small selfish desires, no matter how they try, things will still unravel and collapse because there will be confusion. So the question you were asking, what formula can we have? A very simple one. Follow your intuition.
Thank you for that. And I just want to another question, which is basically we've talked about intellect and we talked about the spirit, but does intelligence, play a part in our first impressions? So if somebody, let's say, is more intelligent, does that mean the first impression is they're better at their first impression, or it's got nothing to do with that intelligence? Has that got anything to do with basically in our first impressions?
If one were to examine carefully, once the word intelligence is mentioned, the picture that many will have is that of being clever. Whereas intelligence may only be referred to in a purified intellect. A purified intellect which is most able to have picked up the first impression that have arisen from out of the spirit and make use of it. Only that person, one will say, is intelligent. For one is talking of a purified intellect. Otherwise, one may refer to the others as being clever, because based on the experiences the intellect has gathered, it knows many things, and it based most of its explanation only within the limits of its experience. And it is very quick based on those experiences. To put it very bluntly, it is like what's may refer to nowadays as algorithm, or which is applied in computers where they have learning, artificial learning, this, that. That is not intelligence. That is cleverness. For the program is tied up. That which is of intelligence is that of a purified intellect that is able to look beyond the limitation of the intellect, or that's able to receive the first impressions that assail it and make use of it in accordance with the dictates. This, many a time, can be found in the arts. very rarely in the sciences. For in the arts, one may come up with some picture which had not been perceived before, or with some piece of music which is so moving and had not been played before. For with the spirit, it's able to, in its expressions, pick out the vibrations that assail it from out of the greater universe, the vibrations that even come from out of paradise, its origin as it matures, and is able now to pass it on to a purified intellect. That purification could be for a short period, and many then render it as piece of music which could last for a few minutes or a few hours. So one can already see, on the one hand, that which is artistic, and on the other hand, that which is scientific. That which is artistic many a time does not seek justification based on the local material, but is able to perceive the finer vibrations. Whereas that other case of the intellect relies on the locality, on the vibrations which are tied to the local space and time, or to the earthly conceptions. Again, that also explains the origin of languages. But that's a different topic for another time.
Thank you for that, Gregory. What you're saying sort of makes me think of the, let's say, ancient peoples who were, let's say, closer to nature, and maybe, you know, who can work with the nature beings, you know, in terms of finding cures for the, let's say they got injured or something, and you know, they would go to let's say they would be guided even with the nature beings to, let's say, a plant where they could find something that will, you know, help with their injury, you know, to heal that injury or something. And you mentioned vibrations, you know, being open to these vibrations, and you could say even just sensing, oh yes, this is the right plant, this is a poisonous plant, you shouldn't go to touch that one, you know, shouldn't eat the fruit of that one. So would you say there's been a decline with human beings, that we've lost touch with nature, and, you know, because we've cut off, you know, we just don't use our intuition properly now, or as well as we used to? Somehow we've cut ourselves off. Has there been some decline?
Thanks. The evidence suggests so. Why? A very simple example. Look at the pyramid. There were no massive caterpillars or machines. Yet, may go into Egypt, you find pyramids which were constructed thousands of years ago. Go to the land of the Incas. Look at what they built. There were no massive machines like we now have, and we're able to put up these structures. Many a thing which the intellect cannot grasp has always been there. In any scenario, one should understand that this creation, or the concept of creation, is a construct where light and truth itself, which is the law, and light, which is the substance, were able to come together to form a construct. In this construct and in these structures, which have been put in creation or put in nature, there are beings which help in the transmission of power. These beings have always been there. It is these beings that the simple folks, the simple human beings, tend to or cry out to. In the past, many were able to perceive them, many were able to hear them through their inner ears, and many were able to see them through their inner eyes. And in their vibrations, they followed the advice that these beings of nature gave. And whenever they had injuries, they were able to appeal to these beings who are in charge of the administrations in nature, and they were helped. In that way, they worked with these beings and were maturing and were able to climb from one ladder to the other. But with the age of the overdevelopment of the intellect, these beings were ignored. And as we all rightly know, whatever connection that you have and you do not use, before long, that path will dry up and it will fall into fables. That is what has happened. And that is why when many simple people now talk about the beings of nature and the fairies, they are swept away and say, no, this is not true. But it is true that the construct, which is creation, which has given rise to nature, has put these things in place. These in place to be able to do the administration of nature. For how else can the vast universe, the vast physical universe, be maintained if these beings were not there? It is also a grace that permitted that the earth was prepared and the right constituents put in place such that man can incarnate here and mature. The incarnation, which went through a gradual process in the preparation of the physical body, which went from stage to stage before the inner core of man was able to descend and take possession of this physical body. These are discussions for other times. But man has cause to be grateful for the grace that permitted this to come into being.
Thanks again, Gregory, for this answer. Again, you giving this picture that really how little we know about our lives and how this life is meant to be. So thank you for that. Mena, did you want to say anything? Sorry, just I didn't hear you. No? Okay, hold on. The volume is so weak I couldn't really hear you. I'll continue. Gregory, you know, women and men. Um, we think of women as being sensitive and, you know, in a way sharper in their intuition than the men are now. And also we think, oh, men and women are meant to, when you think of human being, you know, there should be equality and between male and female and so on. So can you, first of all, just confirm, is there some, are women sharper in their intuition than men? In, you know, getting an impression of what's happening with the first impression? And if so, why is that so?
Thanks for these questions. It is good to look at the totality, the comprehensiveness. In the first case, every human being here on earth has come through women. For it is the egg from the woman and the sperm from the man. But it is the woman who carries this preparation for a period of time. And that being the case, it's only fair that that responsibility which the woman has undertaken, that need to be matched with more resources to whom much is expected. Much has already been given. So also is the case of the woman. From nature, we can already attest to that. For through her, we now have specific intuition, not only for herself, but also of the growing baby that has to develop in her womb. So there are two different, one for herself and one that is undergoing development in the womb. So that is a massive responsibility, and nature has already granted that the woman is given much. So she, as an example, is the transition for man to incarnate on earth. That is what we have learned from nature. But on a spiritual level, when we started the discussion, we did mention that the human spirit started as a spirit seed grain. It wasn't a man, it wasn't a woman. And that as it came down from that height, it started as an unconscious spirit seed grain. It became aware of its surroundings. Being aware of the surrounding is similar to to consciousness, but it hasn't attained self-consciousness. As it experiences further, it wanted to take a form that will assist it in its maturing. That decision, one had mentioned, is the first impression. And it takes on the form of either a woman or a female or of a male. If it's a female, is directed towards the more sensitive. That which is more sensitive is able to perceive the finer vibration. That which is denser is not so perceptive as that which is not that dense. For that which is dense is meant for the rougher parts, whereas the woman now has the finer parts. But both are supposed to work together. It doesn't mean they have to be married. Both are supposed to cooperate. One in the receiving of the radiation that is poured out in creation, and the other in the active participation in making use of those radiations in the works in these subsequent parts of creation. One has only mentioned the tokens. A more perfect or a perfect picture can be found in the work, in the light of truth, the grail message, where for a discerning human spirit, all that it needs for its existence will be found.
Thank you again, Gregory, for your answer there. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And if you're interested in getting a copy of the Grail message or want some information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is first impressions. And if you're interested in joining in the discussion with any question or comments, you can contact us on this UK number, which is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00 44 79 444 313 66. So you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Mena, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I've been cut off. I've not been hearing.
Yes, just so that you're back now. Okay. Yeah, did you have anything else you would like to ask?
Yes, there's a question. If I approach a vendor, like a retailer, and selling, packet of chips, I have a choice. I could, use my impressions to make a choice. But when I come to a vending machine, I don't exercise that. I don't have any choice. What do you say? Where do you think I should purchase my items? Is it from the vending machine or from the a vendor or a retailer where I could make a choice?
Okay.
As the spirit wishes, as your spirit moves you, so you yourself must respond. If along the line you have the strong inner impression to use a machine, so be it. Whatever experiences lie along that line will be for your benefit. If, on the other hand, you sense you should move towards a retailer, so be it. The key here is it is the inner spiritual movement that counts. First, you yourself must learn to pick up the correct picture. Which picture will lead to the maturing of your spirit, not not something just to facilitate that which is intellectual. Many times we seek for experiences which will just facilitate what we are doing. But on the long run, we find that we are being pushed towards certain other experiences. And in fact, it is when we have been pushed away from the intellectual experiences that seeks to facilitate and make us run through life as if blindfolded. That is when many things occur. And that is when the spirit starts waking up. For things then occur which challenge the norm, which then awakens the spirit because the spirit is now forced to defend itself.
Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like you kind of want me to believe now that the spirit, I mean, my spirit is decisive in making a choice. Why is it that you have to put pressure on another to read the grail message if it's left to the individual to make a choice or not? Do I need to be pressurized to read the grail message, or could I just, out of my own volition, decide to read the grail message when I want to?
There has never and ever been any pressure for one to do anything, for it is futile to say, go and do this or go and do that. However, it is only a request, for in following a request, not a pressure, many things will then unfold. Only where there are challenges, only then are you forced to look within. So in the case of the walk in the light of truth, it's only a suggestion or a request, for these discussions are based on the foundations of the laws of creation. Seen from an intellectual point, that is an assumption. That is not
Okay.
a given certainty. However,
All right.
the human spirit must examine. If you do not examine, how would you know? In the process of examination, the spirit is challenged. Only he or she who dares to face the challenges, only he or she can win through. Else, if there are no challenges, how can you make progress?
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Is the spirit always vibrant? I mean, do do we have sleeping spirits? Is the spirit always active? Is it always that vibrant? Or there are influences that tend to lure it to sleep, or things that tend to cover it up? Can you expand on that?
The spirit grows in experience, in maturing. However, many times when those experiences are not passed on back to the spirit, then it doesn't grow from the state it was. The more experiences it has, the more it grows and is forced to exhibit or to cultivate those virtues. The cultivation takes different formats. Like we mentioned some time ago, having a firm good volition, having patience and perseverance. These are qualities, which qualities most of the time are not learnt in school, but are built up deep within patience and perseverance. And many have said you can get it if you really want, but you have to try and try. Now ask yourself, if you do not try, if you do not exert yourself, even to speak, even to walk out of your house, how can your feet grow strong? If you do not exert yourself to learn a language, how can you understand how to speak the language? So one must well understand that the spirit has to grow strong, but the challenges that the spirit requires has to be there. What has been discussed in these cases is that the walk in the light of truth, the grail message, will be a faithful assistant or a faithful companion in helping to enrich the spirit.
Thank you again, Gregory, for that. I wanted you, Gregory, to sort of look at some everyday word and see if that helps us to, connect with the first impression. So, we talk about we feel with our heart, and something something we sense with our heart. Would you say that is because that you consider to be like a spiritual thing in a way, um, and so would you say that is, you could say, if you get something from your heart, is that like a first impression rather than, let's
Yeah,
say,
gut feeling.
something of, so say it again, Mena?
Yeah, gut feeling. Yeah,
Gut feel,
Yeah, yeah,
gut feeling, yeah.
yeah.
So would you connect that with that term, heart, your gut feeling, with the first impression, and then um, because I say, with your, you think about with your head, and because we get that dilemma sometimes. Your head says one thing and your heart says something else, and then you don't know which one to follow. Should you follow your heart? Should you follow your head? So, Gregory, when we say these words, are we, what is it really referring to?
When the heart is referred to, is basically the gut feeling or one's intuitive perception. Whereas when the head is referred to, that's the center of your thoughts, which is tied to the intellect. But we should not forget these are supposed to walk hand in hand with the spirit leading and the intellect being the executor. What one has to understand or have to observe is the sequence. The one that provides the picture without words, and the other one that provides the words to the intellect and do all sort of things. Because that picture in this particular case needs to be interpreted in the local parlance. However, let each one examine, if they can, the lecture intuitive perception. That will be very helpful.
Thank you again, Gregory, for that. Mena, is there anything you'd like to continue add?
No. I think it's almost time to finish. Yeah, just 4 minutes remaining. No, I think it's well discussed. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, I agree as well. Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners to finish off for tonight?
Follow your first impression.
Thank you for that. Dear listeners, uh, this is Saad here in the studio. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. As usual, we'll be back next Tuesday. We've actually got a topic now, the title for next week's discussion. It is Keep the Half of Your Thoughts Pure. I'll say it again, keep the half of your thoughts pure. So we'll talk about that next week, next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. As usual. So have a great week. I wish you joyful activity and God bless. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Mena, for
So,
joining the show again
uh,
tonight.
uh,
Take care now.
thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Take care
Thanks,
now.
sir.
Yeah. Dear listeners, stay listening. Our next presenter should be here soon, Brother Sayom. We just finished a bit early tonight, but he should be here any moment. Keep tuned in for Brother Sayom.